Hey guys, welcome to Code Decode. Today we have Srinivas with us. He's having around 3+ years of experience in this IT industry. So let's get started and have a mock interview with him. Also, if you want to be the part of this mock interview series, please add your details and information in the Google form given in the description below. Let's get started. Hi everybody. Today we have Srinivas with us. He is having almost 3 years of experience. And today we have with him to share his knowledge with us and his preparation with us. Thank you, Srinivas, for doing this for the community. We will always be in depth for you for this. Can we start?
Yes, we can start.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So as far as I can see, you have few tech stacks in your resume. That is, if it will be great if you can brief us about the tech stacks that you have worked with.
Yeah, I had around 3.5 years of experience as a Java developer. During this duration, I have used Java, Spring Boot. When it comes to microservices architecture, we had used Spring Cloud related functionalities. Yeah.
Okay, nice. Okay, so let's get started and let's. Can you brief us like how did you implement microservices in your project?
Yeah. There are several services which we are in our project. So when it comes to service discovery and service registry, where when the application was deployed into the cloud, the main theme of the microservices is to make the services resilient and scalable. So when it comes to scalable in the cloud environment, each service is going to have different instances based according to the load requirements. That time every instance has its own IP address. So to get the details of that IP address and for particular instances up or down, so with that we can have service registry and service discovery to find the details about those. And when it comes to gateway, which provides a single entry point for connecting to all the microservices.
Okay, that sounds great. Hey guys, recently we have launched a course covering an end-to-end full-stack application using Angular as front-end and microservices and Spring Boot as the back-end. Also, we have used Cloud to deploy this application, and we have used CI/CD, that is Jenkins and Argo CD, for continuous integration and continuous deployment. The technologies that we have used is RESTful web services, Spring Boot and microservices for back-end, Angular for front-end. GitHub we have used for version control system. Also, to make the code unit testable, we have used JUnits. We have used Sonar for code quality checks. Also, for containerization, we have used Docker and Kubernetes. And to deploy this whole application, we have used AWS and multiple services from AWS. Also, we have used SQL as well as NoSQL, that is MongoDB and SQL. On AWS, since for the SQL we have RDS, we have used those services, and Jenkins and Argo CD for CI/CD pipeline. Also, this is an architecture of the application that we have created where the front end is Angular and the back end is microservices. We have used ALB load balancers, Ingress for routing and load balancing. And we have used SQL and MongoDB for SQL and NoSQL DB management with Eureka server and all those microservices counterparts. Now, this is the CI/CD pipeline. This is the CI/CD flowchart for the application that we have created on local. So this is something, a flow when you create an application in local, push it to GitHub, create a Jenkins pipeline and do the CI/CD using Jenkins and Argo CD. And at the end, deploy the whole code at AWS EKS. Complete description of this course is covered in a very separate video. The link for that video is also given in the description bar below. And also the link to purchase that course from Udemy is also in the description bar below. So please go and check the description for all these links. So basically you have used service discovery for your registry of your microservices and API gateway as an entry point to your microservices, all the microservices.
Yes.
Okay, so I would say why do we really need a service discovery?
As it was like there are two different types of load balancing. One is related client-side load balancing and server-side load balancing.
Okay.
When it comes to client-side load balancing, the services are interconnected to get the information as a single transaction. It was like a single transaction. So if the services are interconnected, we don't need to check whether the particular service instance is up or running. So to avoid that and get the information of the particular instance, we are using service discovery. Whenever a particular service is up, the instance, it has to register with the service registry.
Nice.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. I understand that. That is basically just like a phone book directory where you have the mapping between your microservice name and its location, so that they don't have to discover each other with proper URL. Rather, they can directly look up with the microservice
Get the
name from the
information.
registry and get the exact location. So you said that we have used cloud also for your deployment, right? So why is service discovery very important in cloud environment and not that important when you have it in your local application setup? So how does this service discovery help you with the cloud applications more?
Okay. The microservice that itself to provide the scalable and resilient applications. When the application is of type cloud native, it was deployed into the cloud based on the load and the requirements. The application has to scale up and scale down according to the load base. So based on load base, it can have multiple instances. With the help of load balancer, the load will be distributed to different services. So we don't need to check every service that which is having which IP address. The with the Yeah, that's it.
Yes, I agree. That's perfectly correct. So when you deploy your application to cloud, each of the service comes up at a dynamic port and dynamic URL. So if you're scaling up, you will have multiple instances at different IP addresses. So you don't have to memorize and hard code each and every IP address in each of the application, because you cannot always have this multiple microservices instances being registered and hard coded in a application.properties. So prevention of multiple time deployment, you use service discovery in cloud application. Perfectly fine. That answers. Thank you. Now you said something about the service registries. Okay. How about this, that I have one instance of my service discovery and that is crashed and all my registry is gone. So how will you prevent the failure of your service discovery?
The service discovery itself contains several instances. So each is going to communicate with each other and exchanges the information. Sometimes the each instance is going to cache that information. So it was around 15 to 10 seconds. That time you don't need to get the information.
Correct. I agree that in the cloud, we always have multiple instances of service discoveries, so that if one of the service discovery is down, another followers who are also having the registry, or basically the information or the mapping between the application and their URLs, they are there. So if one crashes, another is ready to serve your request.
Yes, that's it.
That's perfectly correct. Yes. Also, you said something about the API gateways in your microservices. So why did you use API gateways?
If any particular microservices environment, there are different services. When it comes to security, security and different patterns that will help, that makes the application resilient and secure. So with that, to provide a single entry point for all the microservices, and if we had implemented the security and other patterns inside the single for each microservice, the size of the microservice will be more. And if a particular service is going to get the authorization or any that time, it is going to send multiple requests to the authorization server. So to avoid that, we can use API gateway. It provides a single entry point to connect to all the microservices, and the API gateway is also deployed into the same network where all other microservices are connected. In API gateway, we can use the help of root locate builder. We can define the paths to different services. So we only expose the endpoints of API gateway. We don't expose other endpoints, other services.
Perfect. That sounds perfectly fine. Yes, the advantages of using the API gateway is abstraction. That is the biggest advantage, because in the UI, you do not always have to ask what is the URL for user, what is the URL for the food microservices. You don't have to do that. You just hit a particular one microservice, that is your API gateway. everything will be redirected from there. Yes, abstraction is one of the advantage. I agree. Secondly, also you said it right that why to implement the same security in all the microservices? Why not let's do it at one place, that is the API gateway, so that every other it will anyways be in the same network. Yes, that is correct. Also, in the same network, you don't need security to communicate much in the private cloud. So yes, that is also fine. Also, that becomes the single point entry point for all the microservices from front end. I agree. You said something about the security implementation. So how did you implement security in your project?
We had implemented the main for the API gateway. We had implemented OAuth 2 for authorization along with the Pixie. So the front end application is going to connect with the backend application, which is only the API gateway. For services, we had provided method level security, which is like role based authentication.
Nice.
Role based authentication and user based authentication.
And how did you implement role based authentication? How?
We had created a separate configuration class inside the particular application with defining role with the help of security filter chain and having any matches with inside that we can provide the URL based on the particular URL and any role. We can hardcode the role inside the any role method. With that only the particular role contains the particular URL, then only the URL will be accessible for the API will be accessible for that user.
Perfect. That sounds perfect. So basically, you have a proper filter chain as an interceptor who is going to intercept each and every request coming to your application, and you have defined a role. With each of those role, you are validating whether that particular person is having that role and is having that proper access to access that particular URL. And you might have some request which will be permitted forever. For example, some get methods would be there which will not be needing any authentication or authorization. So you might have used some permit methods also in those.
Yeah, permitted at the end of the request. You can use that.
Perfect. And for the role-based authentication, we usually use either it pre-authorized methods, like either it pre-authorized annotations. So did you use it?
That is for the method level. That is for the method level, and this is for the entire APIs level.
Nice. Okay. So the class level you have used filters, and for method level you have used annotations like pre-authorized. That is perfectly fine. Yes, I agree on that. Secondly, you said that you have used Auth 2. So Auth 2 is a standardization. So what format of token you have used for communication? What type of token is it? Is it a basic?
It was like
basic 64 encoded token or a proper JWT token?
Yeah, the proper JWT token we had used.
Okay. And you have, so how these communication goes? So you have told me about the authorization part, that you have role-based access controls over your APIs. But how is authentication done for your application? How do I say that yes, I am authenticated to your application?
Before the user has to log into that application, the user has to itself register with the application. The time we are storing all the credentials with the authorization server. For authentication, we are using OpenID Connect.
OIDC.
Yeah, OpenID Connect.
Yes, that's perfect.
Then,
yes. So basically, you've used OIDC plus Auth 2 for your authentication and authorization. That's perfectly fine. Nice. So, did you use any third-party authorization servers like Okta, or how did you do that?
Yeah, we had used Okta server for handling and providing tokens.
Oh, nice. So basically, your Okta server behaves as an authentication and authorization service for you, who will manage all the authentication and authorizations and will provide you the tokens. Nice. That's great. Okay. That answers my question for the security part. Now, coming to REST APIs, you have multiple APIs in the backend, right? So, how did you secure it at method level using @pre-authorize? Now, suppose I am a hacker who is trying to hack that particular communication between the front end and your backend. What secures your communication? How is your communication secured with JWT token? What that JWT token has, that your communication from front end to back end is secured.
Okay, when it comes to JWT token, it contains a header, payload, and the signature part. But signature part is optional. But when it comes to payload, the payload contains the information related to the particular request. When it comes to header, it contains the token type and the type of encoding that it was using.
Nice.
It was like base64 URL encoded. So we are providing a normal string which is stored inside the as a secret inside the application file. So with that, it is going to generate a JWT. With that, it is going to generate a token whenever the particular user from the front end is going to send that request. First of all, it will check it will get the details from that header and payload, and it will do the base64 URL encoded and checks with the help of signature that was in the application. Once it got the signature as the same that we are storing in the starting, then only it will take consider as a valid request.
Okay. Otherwise, it is hacked and corrupted one.
Yes.
Nice. Okay, so that is why I think signature is the most important part for the JWT token for the security part, because using the encoding technique that you have added in the header, there is some secret with which the secret this particular signature is encoded.
Generated.
Yes, only that secret will be with our backend APIs. If you don't have that secret, you will not be able to decode the signature. So if the signature is properly decoded with that particular secret, then I think that it is a valid token which is not tampered.
Yes, it will check the token with the signature, so then only it will authenticate.
Perfect. Yes, signature was important for security. That sounds great. Also, if you said there is something called as body in the JWT token, that is the second part in the three parts of it.
Yeah,
So what does
payload.
body contains in JWT token?
Body contains the data which is like a request body which contains information related to the particular user, like response body.
Not the
Request body.
response body. Yes, that's right, that it contains data about the user. So basically claims are there in the body which gives you information about that this is the user ID of this user, this is the role of this user, this is some personal information about the user, and that request comes in this body. Perfectly fine. Yes. Okay, that answers all my questions for the security I have. Going ahead with some scenario-based questions for the microservices. How did your microservices communicate with each other?
The microservices are communicating in two different ways. One is synchronous and asynchronous communication.
Okay.
For synchronous communication, we are using Open Fine Client for communication between the microservices. For asynchronous, we are using Kafka as a message broker for the asynchronous communication.
Agree. Now I can say that there is some latency getting induced while my microservices communicate. So what happens is one microservice calls another one, and there's a lot of delays between these communications between the microservices. So can you suggest some methods with which we can increase the performance of these communications with these microservices and reduce the waiting time for the client?
When it comes to when the services are communicated, they are going to transfer data. So that data is going to related to the entirely database related queries. So we can write the efficient queries with that. We can reduce that. And if there are particular get APIs, the data is not going to change much time. We can use caching to store that data.
Okay, I agree. Also, for the query optimization, we can use indexes on our databases if we have the proper SQL ones. Okay.
Yes.
Also, how about this, that I'll figure out that my communications need not be synchronous all the time. I'll figure out that rather than having all those things as synchronous communication, I'll figure out where I can have the asynchronous ones and convert those synchronous communications to async ones. Can we do that? For example, my application is going to send an email to my customers. So I don't
Okay.
want it to be synchronous. It's not needed. I can just leave, as you said, you are using Kafka. So just leave it at Kafka and just go ahead with your own communications. So that is one of the way, by finding out the pit points where I can convert my synchronous communications to async one, so that my threads are empty and not stuck with the synchronous wait of the requests for the response. Yes,
Yes.
your first 2 points are valid. The third point, I think that can also be done. There are many other ways. Like for example, if the one microservice is very slow and rest all are very fast, you can find which particular microservice is actually having a very slow and a downtime. We can figure out those bottlenecks in the microservices architecture, where our bottleneck microservices, which is taking a lot of time, and we can enhance and improve that. I agree. That sounds great. I'll move ahead. How did you implement logging in your system? Logs. How did you manage loggings?
We are using SLF4J logging library
Okay.
for our projects. So there are several levels inside this warn, error, debug,
Okay.
and info. With these levels, we are going to print the statement logging statements.
Okay. So you print the logs. Now, how do you see those logs which are getting generated?
Okay, in our local environment, there was only a single instance, so we can see those logs inside the
Console.
console. So, but when it comes to microservice environment, the particular request is going to different microservices. So, with the help of the centralized logging system, we can see all the logs in a single place for all the microservices.
Perfect. And what tools have you used for visualizations of your logs?
We are using Grafana as a visualization tool for the metrics and as well as logs. For
Okay.
getting logs from the multiple for each service, we are using ELK stack,
Okay.
which includes Logstash, Elasticsearch, and Grafana.
Okay. So, can you explain a bit about this ELK stack? What is EL and K in this ELK stack, and how is it useful for centralized logging?
Okay. When it comes, first of all, the every microservice integrate must had a dependency which is related to Logstash, which collects and stores all the logs related to the particular particular service. When it comes to Elastic Logstash is collect and filters the logs. Elasticsearch is going to store the logs. Kibana is for visualization of particular logs. So we have to provide the Logstash dependency.
Okay.
When it comes to it, had a separate configuration file where we are going to provide a path to the particular file to store all the logs.
Okay. Okay. But you said that Grafana we have already used for visualization. So how come two applications for the same maybe for some applications you're using Kibana, some for Grafana. How is it for you?
Okay. Actually, the ELK is a separate stack for the entire application for logging, monitoring, and other things. But when it comes to Grafana, we can use the Elasticsearch and Logstash as a data source inside the Grafana for
Okay.
visualizing of logs and as well as metrics from the Prometheus. So
Okay. So
Kibana is not mandated at all. Whenever there was some problem inside this, um, in
you
that
switch to
time we can
Grafana.
use Kibana.
Okay. And what is Prometheus you have used for?
Prometheus we are using for getting the metrics from the each microservices. It
Okay.
internally uses micrometer which gathers all the health related and metrics
Information.
actuator endpoints from the each service.
Okay. When it comes to actuator, why do we need actuator in an application?
Actuator is a separate dependency inside the Spring Boot framework, which provides the information related to the entire application, which includes readiness check. Health check includes combination of readiness and liveness, and provides information related to heap space, memory. uh, that information we get from the actuator, and it was very helpful in the microservice microservice environment. So the microservice, when it comes to gateway, the gateway has to start only once all these services are up. So with the help of health check from the endpoints, we can use that.
Understood. Okay, and okay, that is why you have used Excavator for multiple health checks and all for your production ready environment. You also said something about we would be doing caching for the performance improvement. So, what caching technique you have used in your system, and how does that help increasing your performance?
So there are some particular get methods which retrieves the information.
Okay.
For get methods, we had used @cacheable annotation for that methods.
Okay.
So we can provide the cache information for a particular time period. We can define that inside the application.properties file. So it will not make database calls for every of the time.
So basically, you are reducing the IO calls to DBs and all.
Database.
Okay, that's nice. Okay, now, so you have used any ORM framework for your communications with databases?
Yes, we are using Hibernate.
Okay. So, have you utilized the caching mechanism of these ORM frameworks, or you have created your own caching technique?
We had used our own caching.
Okay. How did you implemented that caching then?
With the help of entity is cacheable and other things is going to use internally this, right?
Yes.
Or entity manager.
So yes, you can use @cacheable and cache evict and all these things. These, if you're using it on your entity and entity managers in session, then it is the internal one that is provided by Hibernate for you. And there are 2 levels of caching for the Hibernate. So
first level, second level cache.
Yeah, first level is by default. The second level is that the one you have implemented using the annotations and all that is given by Hibernate to you.
You got it.
Agree. That's perfectly fine. It's just that it is something which is internal to ORM, which we just use it. We just don't know who gave it to us. That's fine. Okay. Okay. Now I have a scenario-based question for you. Okay. So you have said that you have worked with multiple REST APIs. Now your REST endpoint is used by one of the consumer. So consumer X is consuming your REST API. Now you want to share the whole contract like to your consumer that you can use this REST endpoint using these parameters, these request parameters, these query parameters, this response body. This is how you're going to get response back. If you do not provide this query parameter, I'm going to respond you with 400 bad requests that you have not given this to me. So all this contract is so much to tell mouth to mouth with your consumer. You cannot just have a verbal discussion about these. All the endpoints, all the requested parameters and all. So how did you communicate this contract to your clients?
It provides with the help of API documentation, we can give the details about the particular which type of API is getting which type of request body and which type of, and we can define the type of fields that we are going to use inside that. With the help of Swagger API documentation, we just provide the URL to that particular consumer so he can see the application, the type of request payload, he can see all those information.
Okay, that's perfectly fine. So basically you are going to share your Swagger URL. That Swagger URL has all the documented APIs that is available to your clients, right?
Yes.
A bit tricky questions around this. If my consumer is not allowed to see internals of other API codes, just API contracts, just 2 or 3 API contracts I have to give to him. Is there any way to do that? Usually it's not done for most of the consumers, because if consumer is having access to one APIs, it will be having 2 others also. But what if I want to restrict him to just see my 3 endpoints and not the other 5 endpoints? Any possibility?
Okay. When it comes to consider like if the consumer is having access to some particular methods, consumer B having access to and the particular APIs. Uh, we can provide the type of security inside that annotations, right? With the help of Swagger, is it possible?
You can give role-based access also, as far as I know.
For the AP
For the
document.
speakers, yes. Some kind of access you can give, or else you can have two different type of documentations also. Both the ways you can have this achieved. Next, I'll go ahead. Again, a scenario-based questions on the REST API again. Now, you have shared your contract. That is perfectly fine. But now you have a second version. You have made some changes, which is a breaking change. And a lot of change has been done for the second version of the same API. Now, suppose first version, you are giving some response in a particular JSON format. You have changed that response completely. So how do you manage these changing changed version? So suppose there are two consumers, A and B. Now A doesn't want a new response. He says that my everything will break. I don't want that. So how do you manage that one particular endpoint behaves in two different ways for two different consumers?
Okay, we can use the versioning which is inside the Spring Boot framework. We can do versioning based on the URI as well as the request params which we are going to pass inside the URL. So we can provide a particular version 1 URL to the consumer A and version 2 URL to the consumer B. So this will not break the change for the particular user.
So backward compatibility you have maintained. I agree.
Yes.
By versioning you have done that. Okay. How would you deploy it? I mean, will you face any problem while deploying these two versions?
Yes, most of the code is same. That time the code quality might change.
SonarQube will fail.
Yes.
Yes. Then how would you manage this SonarQube issues? How will you manage the common code? How would you segregate it?
I haven't faced the situation.
I agree. There's something called as util classes, which Spring Boot provides, the utils.
Okay.
Using those util classes, you can give all the code to your common util class and just use that utility in both of those.
Is it related to AOP?
No, utility classes, simple utility classes. A very simple utility class, which will have the common code for both the versionings. And in both the controllers or the components, you can use the same code by injecting and auto-wiring it. Or making it static one and just utilizing that using the static class dot method name. If you don't have any property access into it. Okay. Coming to the properties, how did you manage your profilings in Spring Boot application?
All our profiles and application related to properties files are those we are storing them in the Spring Cloud config server, which will be accessible by the platform team, which they will integrate that with the Jenkins pipeline. Whenever the particular build is triggered, so it will get the particular properties file which was injected into the particular microservice, and the application will start.
Okay. So it's done at the Jenkins level. That's how?
Yeah, Jenkins level. Spring.profess.active, we can provide that inside the default properties file of that particular microservice.
Okay. So where do you... so there must be some remote repository where you are keeping these properties common, right?
Yes.
So what do you use for the version controls for this particular application that you have as a config server?
Yeah, we are storing all those properties related files inside the GitHub repository.
That's version control system for you. Okay. So so basically there must be a hook created from your Jenkins to your GitHub to continuously check the change that has been done to this particular, because suppose now I have my prod going live. One of the property I have changed a toggle, suppose I've changed from true to false. How will you get the updated value every time from that config server in your during your deployment?
Okay, the Spring Cloud config server, which internally contains the RabbitMQ as a message broker. So whenever there was a change inside a single particular properties file, it is going to trigger a webhook that will triggers the actuator refresh endpoints for all the microservices. So the time it will, based on that webhook, it will changes all the properties.
And what annotations we have to use on a class to have that dynamic property injected into the class? Anything, something called as refresh scope to pull the refreshed dynamic property. Is that needed?
No.
Okay. In the code,
Enable
there might.
config server and config client dependencies. Based on these dependencies, the particular microservices. Okay, config server is acting as a server, and config client is, each service is acting as a config client. So during the application startup, based on the properties that are defined inside the pipeline, it will automatically gets that.
Okay, but my application is up and running in the prod now. My property changes. It should get the refreshed property now. How will it do that? On the startup, I agree. It will directly fetch it from the GitHub using the GitHub hooks. The application is up and running in the production, and in the meanwhile, I've changed the toggle in the config server.
I haven't faced the situation.
Yes, that's very rare. We usually don't do that. We usually go with the whole set of deployment whenever something changes, not the small change goes. I agree. Maybe the change can be easily detected at runtime using the refresh scope annotations to refresh your properties dynamically.
Okay, but that particular application is already running with the starting configurations, right?
Yes.
So how it will going to change? If it is like a database connection?
No, it's not a database connection.
Normally?
It's a config server. It's going to have your properties at one place. Now, if one of the property changes, that is pulled using that good GitHub hook into your application, and as soon as anything changes, that can be easily reflected at runtime.
Okay, even in...
Yes, even in a running application. You don't have to restart every time you change any property. That's not how the config service has to be. But that's very, very internal and very tricky part. Nobody's going to ask you about 3 years of experience. It's just that you were explaining so much, so I just went a bit more deeper. Don't worry about it. You're already going good. Okay. Going ahead. Okay. Most of the answers you have already given. What CI/CD technique you have used in your application?
We are using GitOps approach.
Okay.
For the CI/CD. Okay, for Jenkins, we are for CI we are using Jenkins. When it comes to CD, we are using Argo CD, which will handle all the deployments related to the Kubernetes.
Okay, so you have used Kubernetes for your deployment. So what cloud platform you have used for your deployment?
We are using AWS services.
And what all services you have used for your AWS cloud? For your application?
We had used several services like Elastic Kubernetes, Amazon Kubernetes service, S3 bucket for storing all the log files, Amazon Secrets Manager for storing the tokens, security related information, Elastic Container Registry for storing all the Docker files, the artifacts and
Docker files or Docker images?
Docker images, sorry.
Okay. Where is your Docker file then?
We are not using any Dockerfile approach. We are using Google Zip plugin, which will generate during the application startup, it will generate the Docker file, Docker image based on the application, and it is going to directly send that into a ECR, Amazon ECR.
ECR. And what is ECR?
It was like a container registry. It will store all the images related to that particular application. Like it is a storage for images.
Images. Perfect. So you have basically used the AWS registry for your image management. You don't use any Docker Hub kind of public repository for your
For store,
images.
yes.
That is very nice. That is because it gives you much more secure image retention when you use your cloud-based registry storage rather than the common public one like Docker Hub. Nice. That's perfect approach that the company has used. Nice. For for the Kubernetes management, that is for you have used EKS.
Yes.
Okay.
Argo CD for managing the Kubernetes.
Argo CD is for continuous deployment, right?
Continuous deployment, which will handle all the files and configurations related to the particular Kubernetes instance or server.
Okay. So can you explain how your code completely flows from your local to your EKS cluster?
Okay. Whenever the particular change is done inside my local repository, I'm going to push raise a PR. Once the PR is approved, so I'm going to commit the changes inside a particular main branch. Not main branch, it is like a dev branch considered for a dev profile.
Okay.
So there was different pipeline scripts for each profile. So whenever there was a webhook which was inside the GitHub. So whenever it finds a change inside that repository, it is going to trigger a Jenkins CI pipeline. In the Jenkins CI pipeline, it is going to get the latest repo from the GitHub repository, and it generates an artifact. Based on that artifact, it is going to get the unit tests done, and Sonar code quality and code coverage it is going to test. Once it meets the particular
Threshold.
points that we had defined, threshold. Once it done, it is going to we are using Trivy for scanning the Docker images and security vulnerabilities inside that.
Okay.
Once the CI is successful, so that time it will trigger a CD from the Argo, which is from the CD to the Argo. It is going to have some manifest files which are inside along with the ECR.
Okay.
So with those manifest files, the Kubernetes will run.
Okay. Now, how about this? If I can rephrase every step now for you, you have done some change in your local. The first thing you do is you commit, as you said, you will commit your code, you will push it to your dev branch, you will raise a PR from your dev branch. Once the your seniors approve it, you will merge it to master. As soon as you merge it to master, there is some change in your master branch. So CI will be triggered because there is a hook created who will trigger the CI pipeline for you. Now CI will go through multiple steps. First, it will clone into its own. So see, for Jenkins, you must have one server, right? Linux kind of server where you are going to clone your code completely. Now there you will run Maven build. There you run all your Maven test, run your JUnits and system integration testing. As you said, that's perfectly fine. Then your code quality is checked using Sonar Cube. After that, once everything is passed, you see build is successful. Now the ACR comes into picture, right? Because now a new image will be created and image will be uploaded to ACR, right? Registry.
Yeah.
As soon as a new image is created, then I think there should be a hook to Argo CD. That now this is the one that is deployed is an old image, right?
Yes.
A new image is arrived, so a new container has to be started, spinned up. To starting a new container, you need a Kubernetes who is a container orchestrator for you. So now Argo CD comes into picture, who fetches this latest image and does the deployment for you. That's fine. And
the Docker, the image is generated at the end of the CI pipeline.
Yes, correct. It is generated at the end of the pipeline. As soon as a new image is there, then again a hook is created for your Argo CD. That now
Argo CD continuously monitors the ECR.
Yes, Argo CD continuously monitors your ACR, and he is the one who is going to fetch the latest image and going to give it to your Kubernetes cluster to spin up a new container with the new image. Perfectly fine. So Argo CD is the one who is going to do the continuous deployment by fetching the image and spinning up a new container with that new image. Perfect. Okay, that was a complete end-to-end flow. Awesome. Done. I mean, at the 3 years of experience, it's really good to have this end-to-end knowledge of the whole process. Nice. Okay, I can also see you have used Docker and Kubernetes. So in your project, you have not used Docker, right? We don't need.
We just use that for creating images. So
Okay.
that's
Okay, that is also done automatically with that engine, right? Okay. So so now suppose my container is up and running in my production. How do you monitor that container that nothing goes wrong? My clients are properly having the request updated. I mean, so they're not facing the downtime.
okay. During the application is running in the production environment, each service having its own issues. Those metrics, okay, metrics. Yeah, it's related to the metrics. The Prometheus will get all the metrics from the particular service, and it is going to visualize inside the Grafana dashboard. So Grafana provides different custom dashboards, which in that we can see all the, and is also provided for the notification and alerting system inside that. So based on that, it will trigger a particular notifications and messages
Alerts.
to the particular concerned teams. Alerts.
Okay. And how did you manage alerts in your team? So suppose you have a team of 5 members. I'm not asking you how many members are you. I'm giving you a situation that suppose you have 5 members. One of you are working for the on-call support, that is even on Saturdays and Sundays. So how is he alerted that the code at the prod has crashed, or you are continuously getting 400 bad requests or 503 or 401? Such kind of exceptions are coming continuously on the production. So what are ways through which you are alerted?
It provides different ways to alert the with the help of Slack, Teams, and other emails. It will going to trigger. Before that, we have to define a set particular threshold capacity inside that inside the Grafana dashboard. So based on that, if it reaches that threshold value, it will send the emails and other things to the particular concerned persons.
Perfect. That sounds great. You have multiple hooks created to Slack, through Teams, through Microsoft Outlook, so that as soon as that threshold reaches, these alerts will be triggered. Perfectly fine. Yes, that is how it happens in the real IT world. Okay, that sounds perfect to me. How was the feedback? Did you find questions very tough, very easy? Was I able to clarify your doubts? How was it?
Yeah, thank you, Yashi, for when it comes to an interview with Yashi, you will explain the answers along with improvisation of the particular answers. Even if a particular person is not able to answer or have given some misinformation, you will correct those information.
Okay. I take it as a positive feedback then. Thank you so much, Srinivas. All the very best for interviews. I know you will crack very good because you have a good in-depth knowledge with all the practical scenarios being implemented, having all your hands dirty with the code. All the very best, and thank you so much for the community. You have done a very good job by sharing your knowledge to us. We will always be in depth for your knowledge sharing you have done today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Yashi. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you for sharing it. Thank you so much, man. Thank you so much, Srinivas, for your time and for sharing your knowledge with all of us. Also, if you guys want to be the part of this interview series, you can add your details in the description, in the form given in the description bar below. Thank you so much.